Hello, my fellow seekers. Welcome to Into the Work, therapy for empaths, seekers, and the intuitively driven, where you have front row seats to therapy sessions and expert interviews that will help you define the important work that you're here to do. So I guess you actually have something better than front row seats. You practically have a seat on my couch. That's right, you will have unrestricted access to actual sessions with real people, exploring real life issues. You will continue to be inspired by powerful conversations with experts and healers that might just share exactly what it is that you need to hear to get unstuck. I am Michelle Pauverman. I am a recovering people pleaser and former anxiety-driven empath, turned now mostly grounded psychotherapist and intuitive coach. I have been helping people for almost 20 years manage their limiting beliefs and anxiety to finally stop the self-sabotage and step into their gifts. I created this podcast, Into the Work, to give you a place to learn more about yourself and give you actionable strategies to finally move those roadblocks holding you back so you can go for what you want. Above all else, my hope is that this podcast is a catalyst for your awakening. If you're listening, you've already taken a step towards getting off of autopilot, and our next steps together will be taken episode by episode, waking you up to the possibilities, the new ways of thinking and being, so that you can stretch into that next level of your story. The spark has already been lit, and my friend, this is a journey from spark to brilliance. So together, let's light a fire. Hi, Kathryn. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Awesome.
How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So you had written in that we were going to talk about healing post-breakup. And you've had quite a journey, like most of us do when we have a breakup, you know? So where would you like to begin today?
As you mentioned, I've been on this journey of healing post-breakup. So a couple of years ago, as I was starting grad school, I had met a person and who was actually in my grad program, 2-year grad program. We met at the very beginning, hit it off, and then ended up in this, couple of year-long relationship. The short story is it didn't end up working out, and that's the experience I've been healing from. I guess some of the more important details to kind of set the stage and provide context is that like early in the beginning of the relationship, there was always this kind of like uncertainty, like, are we friends? Are we going to be more? There was never a lot of communication and just emotional intelligence around how we were connecting or, what our relationship was. And then another interesting piece was that there was another person who he was really good friends with. And in the grad program, people were like, is he into like cat or is he into this person? Are they all just friends? Like, what's going on? We ended up dating, obviously, like got into several year-long relationship and we're planning on moving together. And then kind of got blindsided. So it was a huge betrayal, I guess. And then that girl ended up kind of being involved in how it ended as well. So that, didn't make things easy either.
So can I ask you, so you started this relationship with this person. It sounds like you sort of from the get-go kind of wondered if they were very, as you said, emotionally intelligent, just in terms of their ability to maybe state how they feel or connect with you. And you were in this relationship, and what I'm hearing is there was a side person. Did that throughout the relationship, was that an issue throughout the relationship, this other person? This other friend?
Yes. Yeah, it definitely was. So yeah, early on, definitely picked up on that he wouldn't really communicate his feelings. He was good around like actions. Like he would always text me and like, keep asking me to hang out and like ask me to be in a relationship like several times before I said yes to his like actions lined up, I guess, but the words were never there. And as someone who likes to get deep and talk about things and feelings and stuff, like that was hard for me, but I could see like potential and maybe he would grow. I know now that that's not a good thing to base your plans on off of, but so be it.
In that, it sounds like you had some red flags. Are you able to clarify what those are now that you've been through it?
Yeah. I think there were like a couple of red flags like having to do at the beginning. So that girl, as you mentioned, it was a problem throughout the relationship. So especially in the beginning, he made it clear like he wanted to be more than friends with me. They continued their friendship in a way that I thought crossed boundaries, and I mean, nothing physical, of course, but maybe some like emotional intimacy. And I communicated that to him very early on. And he was like, this relationship is the most important thing to me. Like this, friendship, if it makes you uncomfortable, I'm happy to provide some space there. And so that happened for like a long time. And they kind of weren't really friends. But then and I didn't say you can't be friends. He was like, no, it's happy to just like give it some space. Like I hear where you're coming from. So I was like, okay. But then it always kind of came back in the picture somehow, like at events when our like whole grad cohort was there, like she'd be there, they would kind of, have some type of engagement, make me uncomfortable. I don't know. It always just kind of came back. And then we would talk about it again because then he would express frustration. And I guess looking back, like that was a huge like red flag. Like there should never be any doubt in my mind or anyone's mind that their partner will prioritize their well-being over most other things. Like, of course, you need to prioritize your own well-being, but yeah, you should never have a doubt in your mind if they're like trying to be with someone else. And there was a lot of gaslighting going on, and we can dive into that. I was made to doubt how I was feeling. And I look back and I'm like, I was seeing it so clearly and just didn't want it to, or was being told otherwise.
Oh, that's so disheartening and frustrating and disempowering when you're in it and you see it and and every part of you knows what you're seeing and the person saying you are overreacting. This is not
Nothing to worry
true.
about.
This is
Yeah.
not true, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been really such a roller coaster. Why don't we just kind
Yeah.
of get an idea of like why was this so painful? What happened?
Yeah, yeah. So in grad school, you plan your postgraduate like career next steps pretty early on. So, 6 months before you graduate, you're pretty much figuring it out. And we've been in this relationship for a couple of years, decided we wanted to move to some place together, picked a city, DC. Um, and we're recruiting around that. So choosing our like career path around this location, we were looking at apartments together, etc. And then yeah, one random weekend we are supposed to go to New York. He's like, I don't want to go. I'm a little bit too like overwhelmed with things. And then I was like, okay, like we can just like hang out and just have a casual weekend. And then that morning we went to the gym as we usually do and came back and he just like had this weird look on his face. I was like, are you all right? And then he told me that he didn't feel the same for me anymore and kind of lost his feelings of like comfort within the relationship. And it was really confusing because it was like a week after like Valentine's Day, and he like got me this plant. It was like, I got you this instead of flowers because it would last longer. And we were talking about how we can bring it to like our apartment in DC as like kind of a memento of Cambridge. And all of these actions that like made it seem like he was in it for the future, like the longer term. And then it seemed
Mm.
like something changed pretty quickly. And
Mm.
then what made it really difficult is that he, very avoidant, like really shut down, did not give me any sort of details of, I asked if there was another person, I asked like what I did, and just would not give it to me. And then it was just, it kind of drew out a couple months of me asking for like more information, like can we work on this? Like if there's something you're upset about, like I want like the feedback. And he'd be like, yeah, like I'll think about it. I need to like get clarity myself. And then I would like ask for another chance like a couple times. And he's like, okay, like I'll think about it. He's kind of just like stringing me along. At the same time though, he was continuing his friendship with this girl right in front of my eyes. Um, and then eventually like just continued into a relationship. So he had told me eventually that um, he didn't want to give this another chance and that he had feelings for her. And so yeah,
Ouch.
then they just
Ow.
proceeded to build their relationship right in front of my eyes. Like last couple months of our grad program, really special experience, right? Graduating, in classes together, seeing them sit together at these like graduation functions, these like galas or like ceremonies, like them dancing together, being romantic with one another right in front of my eyes. And it was
How
extremely painful to say the least.
Wow. So how long from the moment he said, "I'm not in this," to the moment you realized he was in this relationship with this other person? How long are we talking?
I mean,
Months or weeks or days?
so I mean, within days, he was like seen with her, like at the gym together. We would like usually go to the gym together, but then I would see him there in the morning, like helping her, like teaching her how to squat, like giving her feedback. And then this was within like a week of him saying it. And I was like, what? Like,
So
this is so not fair.
a week before that, you were supposed to move away together. Were you both, by the way, I heard you both got a job, right? You both secured employment. Where did you move to?
Yeah, DC. So at that point, I
DC.
hadn't accepted anything, but he knew I was like about to accept something within the next couple of weeks. But I centered all my recruitment around it. So the offers that I had were all DC based. And then he just like drops this ball, obviously shatters my heart. Like the recruitment process on top of being in a like pretty intense grad program was hard, let alone doing it all with like a broken heart and having to see all this
Oh my
unfold in front of
gosh.
your eyes with another
That's what
woman.
I'm like pointing out here is just to acknowledge for a moment. The brain takes a while to process a relationship breakup. The
Yeah.
brain knows the relationship. He was your person. He was your
Mhm.
go-to. Probably you considered one of your best friends.
Yeah.
And you plan to live together and move to DC together and get jobs together. And then within a matter of a week, I'm hearing, he said, I'm sorry, I'm not in it. Got into a relationship with somebody else, and they were in front of you in this intimate graduate program. I am just imagining how absolutely out of your mind and devastating that was. But our brains take a while. It's like anything, even when we lose somebody through death, it takes a while for our brains to catch up and recognize that. That's why
Yeah.
people experience things like, oh, I should call the person real quick, but then recognize, oh, they're not here anymore. And for that to be happening in front of you so quickly
Yeah.
must have been kind of traumatic. Must have just been pretty hard.
Oh, it was excruciating. Yeah, and I think what made it difficult too is I mentioned it. I was like, this is not kind. Like I seeing this, and he's like, we're just friends. Like she's a good friend of mine. She's part of my support system. And then people would be like telling me like, are they in a relationship? I saw them. Like my friends in the grad program trying to have my back, like saying, oh, I saw them. They were looking kind of like coupley. So he wouldn't say it straight up. And then I told him like, are you guys more than friends? Like you need to tell me. And he's like, no, we're not. Several occasions he told me, no, we're not. I don't see her like that. And then a couple weeks later, I think it had been maybe a couple months since that like initial conversation and when he finally owned up to um, him having feelings for her. And then once he did that in his mind, I think he just made it okay for him to just do whatever he wanted in front of my eyes. Like we had this grad trip down to the Caribbean, and it's like really fortunate to have this experience. Don't want to complain about it, but he was acting like a couple with her right on this trip when we're supposed to be celebrating like our 2 years, and I just felt like less than human. Like he was treating me not even how you would treat a stranger, like let alone someone you like loved and or loved maybe quotation marks right for several years. Like I just really could not wrap my head around how.
So I think it would be good to know, what did you do with that? How were you towards yourself, your relationship with self? How did you get through it? And
Yeah.
how did it impact you, right?
Yeah, it was really humbling. I had always seen and heard people going through breakups, having a broken heart, being so sad. And I'd never had that experience. I'd been in relationships before. They ended sort of, I knew it was my doing, right? I knew it was not going to work out. And it was never this betrayal or blindsidedness. But it was humbling to understand that, like, someone could make you feel like a breakup could really bring you this low. What I really used to get through it was obviously my support system, just having people I could rehash the same things with over and over and over again. There's no judgment, right? Like we talked about this maybe yesterday, but same conversation and just having those people to listen. And then I really found peace in it was a book. It was like Meditation for the Brokenhearted or something. It was a book about heartbreak and how to heal from it through meditation. And I had already, for years now, as you know, like a student of like Buddhism and casually, but like to meditate, mindfulness. And that really helped me because it allowed me to really sit in my sadness and pain and not try to wish it away or deny it. Cause there was no like pushing it
Mm,
down and forgetting about it and just like getting
mm,
angry and like moving on to someone else. Like people gave me all sorts of crazy advice, right? But there was nothing I could do to relieve this pain. It was like
mm,
physiological, right? You grew this attachment to this person and just
mhm.
being okay with being really sad and just letting it take its course.
I also hear that you had to take what you knew to be true, which was that he was a safe person and he loved you
Yeah.
and cared about you. And then it sounds like just was such a raw form of what could be perceived as abandonment, right? So this person
Mhm.
who loved you and was safe for you suddenly was being very careless and cold and at some point, I recall you mentioning, like, sort of flaunting the relationship in front of you in a way that didn't really say, "Hey, I wanna be careful with her feelings." That you didn't seem to matter anymore, and that's what it felt like when you were describing it, that I you might feel like you don't
Yeah.
matter anymore, and the discrepancy there, going from one to the other, can really shake us up, right? It's like one moment I'm in
Yeah.
this relationship or for other people, this marriage or whatever. And the next moment, this person is cold. They're not caring about me. Like my brain doesn't know how to make that feel safe, to make that feel true, to understand that discrepancy is hard. And so I can appreciate, it sounds like in that abandonment of having to figure this out, I'm sure it was on some level, this massive rejection, but also, um, what I hear you doing, instead of going in saying that you're smaller, you don't matter, that your self-esteem takes a hit, what I heard you say is like, I continued to repeat myself over and over and over and take up space with my friends, even though their relationship advice wasn't always the
Yeah.
best, they were trying, right? But
Yeah.
you did that. You went into meditation. You went into going into yourself, which I think a lot of
Yeah.
us, we don't even see that as an option because it feels like sitting with ourselves is too painful. So what was it like for you to go from the flooding of all the emotions, right? The trauma of it ending, to sitting with yourself and being with those emotions, those feelings? How did you do that? What was that like?
Yeah, it definitely was not easy. And I think as someone who, has had a journey with anxiety, um, it was easy to like outsource the feeling of like home and comfort to somebody else. So, like you said, like he was my safe space. Like he allowed me, to take risks and like feel comforted with his presence, like go on trips or do hard things and like having someone who you could come home to. And then like that being removed, and then I guess another piece is just like now that person being like dangerous is one thing, and then also just losing that feeling of comfort. I had to really establish it within myself and like establish home within me,
Mm,
and that was really challenging. And I think I was only able to do it because I had really great family and friends around me. I knew if I really needed them, they would be there. So that was nice. It was like a safety net. So then it gave me a chance to like try to rely on myself. And that doesn't mean like keeping things in. It just means like sitting with myself and feeling it all and giving myself the space to heal internally, because I recognize like nothing anyone was going to say to me was going to make me feel better. It was going to be what I said to myself, right? It was an inside job, as people say.
Sometimes, and I wonder if this resonates with you, but sometimes the more we talk about it, the more attached to it and stuck we become, right?
Yeah, totally, totally. And I think we can talk about this too is like, it's been a decent amount of time now. And it's like, do you keep talking about it or do you try to let it fade? Because talking about it sometimes aggravates the wound. But then it's like, how do you really get closure? When will you ever feel like 100% okay when you think about it? Maybe never, I guess. So it's like, when do you just let it go
Mm,
and get over it
mm,
or stop talking about it? I don't It still feels so
yeah.
meaningful even though time has passed.
I
Because
think
I
you're
guess
still
part of the
learning.
story, yeah, part of the story too is that I did still move to DC, He did too. I chose a neighborhood. I communicated to him what that neighborhood was. It was actually a neighborhood we were going to live in together. He still decided to move to the same neighborhood. So from like energy standpoint, and I run into him not super frequently, but there was a period where I saw him like 3 times in 1 month. Like as you get over something or heal from a breakup and start this next chapter, like you want to have physical and energetic space, and that was not provided. So again, it just continued to be like treated with such disregard. Like, just go somewhere else. Choose a different neighborhood. Like, can you just cut me a break? Like every chance there was, it was like, nope, choosing the thing that was going to make this harder for me. But that turned into like making it more that I could grow from, I guess is the optimistic way to look at it.
How have you dealt with him being so close in location?
I haven't seen him very often, but I still like to run and, I'm on guard. I see someone who kind of looks like him, like heart
Gotcha.
starts to race a little bit. Maybe it's him, maybe it's not. I mean, it's definitely slowed the healing, right? Like I need to get him out of my mind, and like being afraid of seeing him and having that worry is not helpful.
There's like an attachment still there. Like you're going to have to prepare yourself in case you do see him, or right? Like
Mhm.
versus the safety of just being somewhere else, not in his space. Yeah, I can appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing to share is like I had communicated my friend had told me he was still moving here, and I sent him a note and I was like, "Look, like I don't want to be friends," because one of the times I saw him, he tried to like wave to me and act all friendly, and I'm like, "No." So I just communicated to him like, "This is my boundary. I don't want to be friends. I don't want to see you. Please don't be in the spaces around where I'm living," because he knew where I was living. And then what had happened throughout the whole breakup is it was pulling words and communication out of him, and he just like didn't respond. And right, to have someone be really mean to you, and then like you try to stand up for yourself, and like them just you just feel like you're suffering in silence, or you're going crazy that like your experience is not real because they're not like communicating back to you or like apologizing or
Mm.
recognizing and acknowledging. So that was just another layer of like, he did something bad, but then there was no accountability. And you're just like, can you hear me? Like you're tearing my heart apart. Like, and there's just like silence.
Hmm. Well, I guess it kind of goes back to that beginning when you kind of felt like you questioned his sort of, you said you questioned his emotional intelligence kind of in the beginning.
Yeah.
And that his ability to do the work, right? His ability to show up, take responsibility, own his part, process his own experience and feelings and what he might be going through so the two of you can reach understanding and there can be respect in that way, care for your feelings, but also, him taking responsibility. It sounds like he doesn't tolerate that very well or have the
No.
capacity.
Yeah, but what was confusing is he was getting better. Like just a week before we broke up, we had a conversation about something else, and it was like a real like I don't know, open communication. Like he had gotten better and had grown a bit. So that's why it was confusing. But then yeah, at the end of the day, like he showed his true colors, and it was what I had seen all along. And a really interesting thing actually, it was like a month before. As I said, struggle with anxiety. I had this feeling that he was just going to like break up with me one day and just like drop me. And I told that to him. I was like, I have this like weird feeling. I'm like, sometimes I don't feel like I
Mm,
know everything that's going on within you. And I have this horrible feeling. He's like, no, that would never happen. And then it's crazy. It came true. And it's like, as I think about what I've learned from this, it's like, do you trust your gut? Was that my gut or was that just an anxiety? And then if things went well, I was like, that would have just been a irrational, like piece of anxiety. But what I have learned is like how you discern that is giving yourself like space and quietness, right? Like a feeling might come up or a thought, but how you know it's true is if you like sit in the quiet, like and feel good and grounded, and you still feel that's true. So that's been big for me. It's like whenever I make a decision or take an action, it's like I needed to do from a place of quietness and groundedness. Like that's how
mm.
I'll hear my gut and my voice.
Right, yes. Right on. That is so
Yeah,
true. Like, how do you
yeah,
differentiate between intuition and anxiety? And I usually tell people,
yeah,
you might not in the beginning. You got to learn how to sit and you have to learn how
yeah.
to know what is the difference of the quality of the information that's showing up in my body, right? The other
Yeah.
piece too that I have to imagine is also part of your work that also can help you in the process of knowing what's anxiety and what's not is because of your own belief system, your own conditioning, your own programming. Do you see it possible that you tolerated things? And this is sort of the empath in you too, the sensitive soul that you are, that maybe you were tolerating things for your own system, your safety system inside, and things that made you go, huh, that wasn't cool, or wow, I really needed a lot more than that from him, but I didn't get it. That there might have been a lot of indications for you, but that whole adage, we get the love we think we deserve,
Yeah.
right? But, for us sensitives and empathic types, and especially for um, we have any people pleasing or we have any of that stuff going on, we tend to feel a little more anxious when people don't give us what we want and then actually do the opposite instead of being like, yeah, that's not okay with me. What we
Yeah.
do is we try to actually kind of bring them closer. It makes us a little anxious, and we want to actually bring them back in and make it okay. And so we try to figure it out. I know, does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah. I maybe a bit. I think what it was more for me is like I wouldn't like the way I was being treated. I would communicate about it and there would be a path towards like fixing it. And then it would happen again. Right. So there's this cycle which was confusing to me. And I think there was an indication that this probably wasn't the right thing for me and I was unhappy. But what was keeping me in it was fear of not being okay without him and thinking
Mhm.
like this was the best it was gonna get. Just from a rational standpoint, like we were really compatible on a lot of different dimensions. Um, so it was that. And then also kind of like a fear around if we're not together, what is it going to be like dealing with this breakup in the program? We have to see each other all the time. All of our friends are intertwined. Then there's this girl. Would they get together? Right. But those weren't, but all that I had to deal with it anyway. Right. And maybe it would have been easier if I had broken up with him. Right.
And I think you've grown a lot just in this experience, I have to imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I'm wondering about, again, this is just for your own exploration. I'm totally good with being wrong. But I'm actually really like being wrong because it helps us get to what's right. So
Yeah.
I just wonder if do you have like a history even of being with people that you second chance and want to fix? Because I just get the sense that maybe you might be somebody who fixes people. Do you know what I mean? Like who thinks like, "Oh, but we can work on it. I'm really good at this. I'm really
Mhm.
emotionally intelligent. I can get him to meet my needs by just showing him and
Yeah.
teaching him." And what's that like for you?
Yeah. It's not something I go in like, "Oh, I wanna fix them." Like, this is a fun
No, no,
project for
no.
me. It's more like they maybe I get to a situation where I know they really care about me, and maybe they don't know how to communicate, so, like, we can work on that together as long as they see the need and wanna do it too. I think I'm just too hopeful, like, maybe too optimistic. Like you said, I'd like to give people chances, and in the relationship before this one, I gave someone a lot of chances. And in this relationship, I thought I made a good effort of not doing that. I don't think I'm like someone who's gonna let someone mistreat me and not say anything. Like I say something, and then if
Mhm.
there's an action plan and there's progress, then I'm like, okay. But the problem is
Mm.
it gets confusing and how long do you give it? I think that's really the decision what people need to get good at, right? It's like you gotta give someone some time to grow, but how long and what do you need to see within that time? And then if you get to that time and they haven't grown in the way you need, like you just need to hold yourself accountable and be like, I need to get out. I think that would have been helpful for me at least.
I think that you had to go through exactly what you went through to be where you are
Yeah.
today, right?
Oh,
Like
for sure.
everything
Yeah.
everything that happened, there's no shame in the game. Everything
No.
that happened is exactly what needed to happen. You're right on time.
Mhm.
But what I
Yeah.
hear in that is like your lesson, right? Like things you've
Mhm.
learned from this is I'd
Yeah.
like to try next time and just to acknowledge for you and for other people who are in this situation, it is very difficult to understand when you're in a relationship and you feel loved one minute and the next sort of gaslit, right? Where like, no, you're wrong. That doesn't happen. But then you saw him put his arm around her, or there was a weird thing happening, or you saw things and other people are telling you they see things and they're like, no,
Yeah.
that's not true. It didn't happen. I
Yeah.
think that it's hard to say, I think to be fair, it's a journey because it's hard to stand in your own and be able to know what's right and what's wrong when in
Yeah.
your heart you see the good in the person too.
Yeah. And you
And
want
us
it to be
empathic
right.
types see the good. We have a hard
Yeah.
time. This is why we can be indecisive in relationships because we
Yeah.
see all sides. We see the good, we
Mhm.
see the bad. When some people see the bad, they're out. But empaths, sometimes we stick around because we like, but we see the good, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And like you said, I think I needed to be on this journey, and I'm much more in tune with myself and who I am and who I want to be than ever before. And I'm, yeah, on a much better path now that I have gone through this, which if anyone told me that during, and people did, the healing, and I would have been like, just stop. Like, this is not what needed to happen. Like, it did not need to be this painful. I didn't need to see them building their relationship right in front of my eyes. Maybe that is still true, but I needed to go through this. And
Yeah.
I feel a lot more comfortable with myself and like a sense of home within myself, which is great. But I think too, at the same time, there's still areas I really struggle. Like, um, and I'm kind of just connecting the dots as we're chatting. Like something that I experience with my anxiety these days is like I have this fear sometimes that like if I'm not okay, like have a health thing or like maybe really anxious, that like the people I need aren't going to be there for me. And it's
Hmm.
harder, right? Because like physically, my closest people are in DC. So I'm like, they aren't here. But
Hmm.
I'm like, what if I call them and they don't answer? Like, what if I'm like left? And I never really understood that how that could be connected actually to what I experienced. But
Hmm.
now I kind of see it.
What do you see as the connection?
Well, just someone I really trusted and like felt like I needed just up and left. And especially, dealing with that heartbreak, they were nowhere to be found. Like, they didn't have to get back in a relationship with me, but they didn't care at all how they made me feel
Hmm.
when I was really suffering.
Hmm.
So it can be confusing for the mind, and then you just worry that other people are gonna betray you or abandon you when you need them most. That's
Hmm.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah, that is quite a connection to see, understand how that our brain can take this one situation and then focus the energy on health and being abandoned that way or being alone that
Yeah.
way.
Like I said, spend some time. It's like, where do I go from here? Like, how do I heal that abandonment thing? Or, thinking about a next relationship. You don't want to put up with anything, like any crap. But then also, if you look for perfection, you're going to be alone your whole life. So what's the happy medium there? What's happy medium with like talking about what happened in the past versus just moving on? I don't
Hmm.
know. I struggle with those things.
Well, one way to look at it might be the thing that comes to mind now is that you have a wound button now. And we all get these wound buttons from the experiences that cause us a lot of pain, right? And they're part of our programming, it's part of our experience growing up. So here you are. And now, what might have been a button that was already created from previous relationships or whatnot, previous things, is compounded, right? So that
Yeah.
button needs a cap. Do you know what I mean? That button needs a cap, or
Mhm.
anybody walking by can breeze by it and tap it, and you can be like, "Oh
Yep.
my god!" Right? Are you going to betray me too? Right? I can't trust.
Yeah.
You meet a new guy. Have you met anybody new?
Yeah. Some people. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that button, it's like it needs a cap. And it needs to sort of like be dealt with, right? But
Mhm.
also just an
Yeah.
awareness of compassionate awareness that, okay, when this happens, if I want to tell this story, maybe I'm getting attached to this button again, right? And
Yeah.
what is retelling about for you? What's behind it? What is it that what need are you trying to have met through
Mhm.
retelling?
I think it goes back to my feeling of like my suffering not being seen or acknowledged.
Mm,
And also the gaslighting, like my experience was real. Like this was messed up. Like I was treated without basic human decency. Like and everyone's like, oh, breakups are always hard. But I'm like, this feels especially hard. And not that it's a competition, but like just having some validation that what I went through was really difficult and, it takes time to heal from. Because I think, people who try to support you, they are like, all right, just like time to move on, like, get back out on the market. But they don't go through it. They don't know what it feels like. And so just, I don't know, if you share the depth of the pain, it can help people support you better and make them more aware of what you're still going through, maybe like even a long time after, like whatever that means. So I think,
Do you
yeah.
feel after you retell, do you feel better or do you feel more attached to the story?
Yeah, so I actually don't like tell the full story very often. Like, and it's interesting too, like making good new friends down here in DC. Like, I wanted them to know, and then I feel afterwards like, ugh, like I don't really wanna. It just makes me feel kind of yucky. But I think maybe instead of retelling it, it's more like if I have a day where something's crossing my mind, like, oh, I'm really wondering if they're still together, or like what their path is, and just feeling like it's okay to talk about that with people
Hmm.
still.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful
Well,
for me.
I think that's also people getting to know you is you being real and vulnerable and being seen
Yeah,
versus perfectionistic and trying to present like you've got it all together, right? Like you're just being real. You're letting people know you. Like
yeah,
what you've been through is a part of your story. I think there's a difference between sharing to connect with other people or
yeah,
sharing because behind it is a motivation of anxiety, needing to prove my worth, needing
yeah.
to meet a need that's unmet. So I keep talking about it. There's a difference between those two things. I hear you saying in a healthy way that you just want to share it to be known, to process what's happening now
Totally.
for you,
Yeah,
right? That's
yeah,
okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes we can stay attached to it because there's like an unmet need. And, then sometimes when that happens, we can have what calls wound mates. So, all of a sudden we're attracting other people that are like,
Oh,
yeah, I
no.
went through this. And then you spend all your time talking about these bad things that happen to you. And that's how you connect with each other, is through the bad things.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so it's just good to be aware of what is this? Does this make me feel good? Does this make me rise up and feel connected to the people I'm talking to?
yeah,
Does retelling this or even just whatever it is, right? If it's talking about it, it sounds like it's good stuff.
yeah. I think so. Yeah, and I think a part of it is like you said, owning it, and then also like in my own words, like accepting it as part of my story. And even doing this podcast helps with that. Like this happened to me and it was shitty, but it is part of my story, and
Mhm.
I need to just write it in. It's a chapter, and I think there was shame in it, right? Like you mentioned before, rejection, like being broken up with, and then the guy moving on to someone else so quickly. Like, what does that make me look like? Like, does it make me look like a bad partner? And just putting all that shame aside and knowing my value and knowing my version of the story and just owning that.
Yeah. And so that is when I think the shift happens for us when we don't need other people to validate us. So the
Yeah.
retelling just becomes about connecting because it
Yeah.
sounds like
Right.
you have gone inward and you have validated yourself. So that when you talk about it, it's not to try to get people to on your side, not trying to get people to say, you're right. Oh my gosh. Right. It's
Yeah.
really just to share yourself because you've already validated within you that what happened was unjust, it was unfair, it hurt, it felt like abandonment. It was wrong in your book of how to, it doesn't meet your values of how you treat another human being. You yourself would not have handled it that way. And so, and the discrepancy, they can feel very black and white. This is a good person and he did this really bad thing to me. And I don't know how to
Yeah.
make those two things make sense. Or one day he was telling me he loved me and we're talking about our future together and I'm hanging out with his mom, right? And then the next minute, within a week, he has no
Yeah.
feelings and it's just shut off.
Shut
So I
off.
can appreciate, yeah, so that you had to kind of come to terms with validating it yourself.
Yeah. And I looked externally a lot for that, like would tell people, engage their reaction. And now sometimes I don't even bring it up to people because sometimes they won't have a reaction. Like, that's so messed up. And that will kind of upset me a little bit. And so it's like, instead of even putting that out there, it's like
Okay.
just knowing it in myself. Like, I don't care how my friend reacts. Like, I know based on my values, this is not how you treat another human being. So yeah, it's just again like confidence in myself and just
So there is that shift happening, moving from validation from other people. It's still
Mhm.
happening a little bit, but
A little
you're
bit, yeah.
definitely moving forward towards, I don't need anybody else to tell me that
Mhm.
I'm lovable, worthy, I deserve
Mhm.
better,
Yeah.
that the most beautiful idea that I have in my head of a relationship is exactly what I deserve, and anything less is jaw-dropping, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, now I think about too, like, where do I go from here? Like looking towards the future. I kind of have this need. Some days I feel like I have a need to have one more conversation with this person. And I'm trying to understand where that's coming from. And I think it's something around like we left on such a bad note.
Yeah.
And to help put it to peace or like closure, like it would be nice if we could just have a really like, I don't know, like just realist. I don't know the right word for it. Like just a conversation of like, that was messed up. I know. I'm sorry. Like, right. But it also would be really risky and it probably would be really painful to open that back up. But sometimes I feel like I would like that for closure. But again, I think closure really is an inside job.
I think you don't have any control over this human being and how he will respond or give you what it is that you need or want, or that you'll even feel satisfied with it. So
Yeah.
a lot of times in a situation, there's two options. I think if you're going to do something like that, you can't be attached to the outcome. It has to be about your
Yeah.
process, because your
Yeah.
process is the healing part. The outcome is completely out of your control. So
Yeah.
if that is the case, if the outcome is out of your control and the process is the most important part because it's your healing, then write a letter,
Hmm. Yeah.
um, and don't send it. Just
Mm.
write a letter to say, this is my final closure. This is the last
Yeah.
things I need to say. This is what I am going to write out, everything that I want to hear from you. I'm going to write out what I wish you'd say to me. And I'm going to say it to myself in this letter. And then I'm going to let it go. And then what I would suggest in your process is, and this is your process, this could be a year from now. It might not be today. But I would suggest you begin the process of forgiveness, because if
Yeah.
you look at him in his totality, who he is from top to bottom, not your reaction of him, not your reaction of what happened, but just him as a human being in his totality, you see his deficits. You see the
Yeah.
parts of him that are incapable of being really what it is that you want or need. You see in his totality that he's a limited being in the area in which you most want to thrive, and he can't offer you that. And so the idea is that, the exercise would be that you actually, I I kind of tell people, put him in a little bubble, hold it in your hands, see him like
Mhm.
inside a little bubble you're holding in your hands. And you just tell him, thank you for this lesson. The goodness I see in you is this. Your places of growth are this. It is not my job. I cannot play this role for you, but I'm going to send you off with love. And I hope that you grow and you learn and you heal, because he has a lot of healing, which he may never do in this life. But it isn't up to
Mhm.
you to do that work either. But it is for you to cut the cords that you have, the needs for him to fix this, the needs for him to be a different person than he is.
Or just
Um,
apologize, really.
he might not do that, though. And
Yeah.
so for you to forgive isn't about him, it's about you.
I
Forgiveness is not
know.
about, right? It is not about saying what you did was okay. It's not permission. The
Yeah.
forgiveness is
Mhm.
about recognizing, I deserve better than carrying this poison of resentment and hurt and anger in my body any longer. And so I'm opening up my heart. I'm surrounding him with forgiveness and love. You are broken. Like, there's parts of you that need healing. And I wish you the best and I wish you well. I'm going to remember some of the good times. I'm going to learn from the parts that were harmful and painful.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
release you and I let you go. and
Yeah.
send him, imagine him walking away from that bubble. He just walks away and just like cut all the cords between the two of you, just release them, cut them up and say, and I know this sounds, you may not be ready for that.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, rationally, like, that makes a lot of sense to me, and I know, like, anger is still emotional connection, even if you're angry at someone, right? They're still
Yeah.
having some power over you. I think what it just feels like he's getting away with it and, like, being absolved of accountability, and there's no justice if I just forgive him.
Mhm. And so that is your attachment from the wound. The
Yeah.
wound wants that from you. Not your
Mhm.
soul, not your like higher self that knows what's best for you, that wants you to grow and get on to the next thing in life, right? There's so many adventures they're so excited about, right? That's your soul. But the ego, the personality, the wound wants justice, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
perhaps if you can lean into your belief system, your trust in the universe and God or whatever it is that you connect with, source, that justice isn't up to you. And it's our ego to think that it's our
Yeah.
job. That is between him and
And
his
the universe.
source and his unit, right? And his karma
Yeah,
and
I love
his,
that. Yeah.
and
Not my
so
job. Hopefully someone else will take care of it,
it's not your
especially
job. I think
so.
you can absolutely trust that he has a
Yeah.
limited experience of life and it will get painful.
Yeah.
And your job is to grow yourself and water yourself. And
Mhm.
forgiveness
Mhm.
is a part of your planting process. It is a part of you releasing and letting go. It isn't about seeking revenge or getting justice. It isn't. You're right. It
Yeah.
doesn't it doesn't suit the wound and ego in that way, but it
Yeah.
does suit your soul. It does allow you to soar and move on and be happy. Because
Yeah.
I know that through breakup, that trauma, of anything
Mhm.
like that, that rejection on such a deep level, there's depression. There's like I have many, many days with no highs and
Yeah.
no good
Mhm.
feelings where it's like I'm just I can't even get out of the sludge,
Yeah.
right? Like you've
Totally.
been through sludge,
Oh, yeah.
and forgiveness
Mhm.
is a part of getting out of the sludge and into the light.
Mhm.
And the only
Yeah.
thing you need to do in order for that to happen, you don't even need to know how to do it. I just gave you a little funny example, but
Yeah.
you just need to be willing. Am
Mhm.
I willing? And you're not yet because you're still a little bit attached to like wanting to, right? When you're
Mhm.
ready,
Mhm.
you just have to be willing and the rest will happen.
I think I'm close. I think I'm not 100% there yet, but I'm close.
Yeah.
I totally agree, and just as you, like, paint that picture, like, it sounds so appealing to me, and definitely, I think where I need to be headed. I think another, like, tactical thing that I'm it's kinda maybe silly, but I had blocked him after I sent the last, like, "These are my boundaries, I don't wanna be friends," like, I blocked him, and now something that sits with me is, like, did he apologize? Like, should I ask my friends and see if they know? Has he tried to reach out to me, right? So it's I don't know if you have any advice on that. It feels like a silly thing, but also part of my experience.
But like you blocked him and then what happened?
I'm just wondering, like, has he, like, tried to reach out to me? Like, did he
Oh.
apologize to me and I didn't see it? Should I unblock
Oh.
him? It's just, like, a silly thing, but
So I'm gonna say to you, it does sound like it comes from the same wound of the I could be wrong, but it sounds like it comes from the wound, versus the soul, right? You can unblock him if you wanna unblock him. You tell
yeah.
me, is that gonna make you feel freer or more obsessive,
I
right? Like,
don't know.
more fixated, like,
Yeah.
I unblocked him, but now he's not contacting me. Maybe I should contact him. It's like, right? Like,
Yeah.
do you want this person in your life?
No. Hard
Then why
stop.
would you unblock them?
I think I want the apology because I want the validation and, like, that I was right and you did a bad thing and you
And what
recognized no.
and what about your stuff that makes you need that, right? What in
Yeah.
it is yours that needs to be right, that needs to be I mean, you are, sure, but what is that that needs you clinging on to get from him that he was wrong and you were right?
I think it's like I need to trust in my experience. Like, what he did was wrong, and I don't need him to apologize for that to be the case. Like, I can say it and it is true.
So what I hear in that is you disqualifying your own self.
For sure. Yeah.
And that's what needs to be healed here today, right? Or
Mhm.
begin to be healed here.
Yeah.
That starts with the acknowledgement of saying, oh, I've been blaming him this whole time for disqualifying me, which he has done. But
I'm not helping.
you are also disqualifying yourself, or you would not have that need for him to validate you. You need to validate you. You
Totally.
need to say, hell yeah, I am not entangling myself in that again
Yeah.
to get a
No,
need met. That's
no
going to
way.
the dry well for water, right? So it's
Going
like, right?
going to
So
poison well for water.
yeah, right. You've come so far, and we can celebrate how far you've come. And we can
Mhm.
also celebrate the juiciness of what's still left,
Yeah.
right? Now, my question to you is, when you're meeting new people, are you coming into trust issues?
I'm just very guarded, as one would imagine. And yes, I guess that would be based in trust issues, right? I've met this guy, and he is very emotionally intelligent, very communicative, very different type of person than I have been with historically. And so that's good, actually. That's good for my like trust issues, I guess, if you want to call them that. Um, but I'm still kind of struggling with how do you know if it's settling versus having high, like rightfully high standards. That's something that I'm struggling with because there's some things about him that I'm like, it's not this instant, like, yes, like, just not looking in the rearview mirror. Like, I'm a little doubtful or whatever.
When you sit and get quiet, what
Yeah.
do you feel about this person?
It feels very comforting and warm. Yeah. And very just gentle, which is really nice.
And do you feel like a little flutter of like, I might like this person?
I don't know. Maybe, but I also am like, don't get too close to me. I
Okay.
don't know. There's some like, I don't know.
So there's some trust stuff that might be blocking you to be able to discern whether or not you have feelings because you can't get past this need for protection.
Yeah, like you stay over there and I'll let you know if you should come closer.
And so what I also hear in that is control, that you might be trying to be in control. You say how it's going to go, and that you have
Mhm.
control, and that makes you feel like you're going to be less vulnerable. Um, yeah, I just wonder if that is getting in the way of having a positive, good experience.
Mhm.
What do you think, though? You know, you're in it. What does that feel like to you?
Yeah, I mean, I need to get quiet, ground myself, and think about, is this resistance due to fear and distrust, or is this resistance due to a lack of compatibility? And I think it's hard when you come out of a relationship. It's like, oh, obviously you're just like scared or whatever. But sometimes it's like we're actually not compatible, and I'm right. Like I don't want
Hmm.
him, even though he's really sweet and gentle and kind. Like there's just something that doesn't click, and that's okay.
Yeah. And is that true? There's something that doesn't click, and that's okay.
Maybe I don't. I need to think about it more. I think
Yeah.
I just been a
One
lot
of
of buzzing in my head, so I just gotta quiet it and just be alone and
one of the
think.
things that I can just plant a little seed on, and you can kind of
Yeah,
bring that into your quiet, right?
yeah.
Is the question, do I like him today? Do I want to see him tomorrow? Because we have this way of really overcomplicating it, right?
No, for sure.
And
Especially
do
me.
you need to know if this is who you're going to marry? Do you need to know, right? Are you allowed to change your mind? Are you afraid? Sometimes us empathics, oversensitive types, we fear feeling all the pain that we're going to cause, right? Like
Oh,
we
yeah, I don't wanna
fear.
disappoint
I don't want
him
to
or
disappoint.
yeah,
There's a people pleaser too. I don't want to disappoint. And so we get really worried about entering into something. And then what if I get trapped and I don't really like them, and then I'm going to want to get out, but I'm not going to know how,
yeah,
right?
which has happened to me in the past. Yeah.
Because that is a symptom of not knowing how to stand in our power, not having very good
Mhm.
boundaries, and knowing that
Yeah,
my feelings are what's important, along
totally.
with being kind along with being right, along with being authentic.
Yeah.
But if you were on a journey to being the most authentic you, right? That I want my 2024 goal is that I make choices that are in alignment with what I know is my truth. And when I'm not sure, that I also give myself permission to find out. And I give myself permission to find out and change my mind and decide for myself whether something works for me of somebody else's feelings, thoughts, or opinions.
I love that. Yes. I'm going to write that down, post it on my wall.
Because otherwise, it's just you're getting caught up in a reaction that's from trauma versus your authentic self. If you're just need to be in control and push them away, or how about, do you like them today? Do you want to see them tomorrow? Simple
Yeah.
question, simple answer. And if that ever changes, it changes. And you just do your best to be in alignment with your authentic self, kind, right? But
Yeah.
truthful.
Yeah. I just love the idea of like having space to figure it out. You don't need to know right now. That's a lot of pressure. And yeah, I don't know. I guess in my mind that like having space to figure it out could put him at risk or me at risk or get messy, but that's okay. Like sometimes it just takes that to really know. You got to get to know someone and
Yes.
yeah.
Right. And how do you do that? Being fair to yourself and this other person without
Yeah.
having yourself be
Yeah.
open to some degree, that it's safe,
Yeah.
that at any time you can change your mind,
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
as we're starting to wrap up here, you had said, and I thought this might be cool to mention here in the podcast, when we chatted before we got on today, you had said you found a book that was really helpful, The Bittersweet Book by
Mhm.
Susan Cain. Susan Cain, is that right?
Yep. Yep, you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So highly recommend this book. It's definitely like a heavier one. I don't read a ton of it at a time. Got to be in the right mood for it. But what it really helped me with, and there was actually a podcast too that kind of introduced me to this idea of like contamination versus redemption mindset. Like I had this idea that if bad things happened to you, it was a contamination. It was like a scar, like a something you didn't want to look back on, and just like an ugly part of life. And but now I see actually, and this is sort of the more redemption mindset that like you need those really difficult, really painful experiences to get where you need to go and grow into your full self. And that has been a huge learning for me, especially over the past couple months of the bad stuff is actually okay and right. It's not like fun or joyful, but it's part of the journey and it needs to be there. And
I
so
would
that
even argue that the bad stuff is more important, more
yes.
influential, more
Yeah.
impactful
Yeah.
to our
Oh,
growth and well-being.
mhm.
And I mean, I think it's pretty profound if we could actually grasp that when it's happening. It's
Mhm.
hard
It's
work.
just hard. Yeah. And it's annoying when people tell you like, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and you'll come out better on the other side of this." Like, so many people said that shit to me, crap to me, and they were like and I just was so upset about it. I'm like, "Just go away. Like this I didn't need to go through this." But for anyone out there who's actually going through this right now, like, it will turn out okay on the other side, and you'll probably be better off than you were.
And to highlight, there's a time where you need to wallow.
Yeah.
There's a
Oh.
time where you need to be attached to the wound and your
Mhm.
victim comes out. We all have an inner victim. Our
Yeah.
victim wants to scream and shout, and people coming around saying like spiritual shit like that, like, "Oh, you're just gonna fly with wings
Go
later."
away.
Right? Because your victim's like, "F you." Right? Like, let us be here, and we have been
Yeah.
victimized, and we're gonna sit in this and find some power in it to make our way
Mhm.
out of it, right?
For sure.
There is some usefulness to that victim, but
Yeah.
there is a time and place for the victim. And now that the
Mhm.
victim is starting to heal quite a bit, you're starting to
Mhm.
open up to this idea that, yeah, I really needed to go through that. And
Mhm.
yeah. Thank you so much, Kathryn. I'm
Mhm.
so appreciative that we got to talk today. And I
Of
thank you for sharing
course.
your story on the podcast.
Of course. It's always a pleasure. So great to connect with you again.
Oh, so great.
Mhm.
Okay, Kath, thanks so much and have a wonderful day.
Okay, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Into the Work Therapy for Empaths and Seekers. Don't forget to grab your free gift, your Shadow Work Transformation Bundle at michellepoverman.com. I've included everything you need to get started to break through the patterns of self-sabotage and finally start to heal the parts of yourself that are getting in the way of truly reaching your potential. From a powerful meditation designed to help you meet and embrace your shadow self, to the guide that's full of curated prompts and important questions to support you on this journey. This really can be the work for you to unmask the root cause of all the issues you've been experiencing, honestly, and start to feel free to believe in yourself and go for what you want. The link for this free bundle is in the show notes. And if you like this episode, I would be so grateful if you could take a moment and rate, click and follow, and leave a review. Of course, you can always follow me on socials at Michelle Poverman. And keep in mind, as you embark on your journey from spark to brilliance, remember, the universe is always conspiring in favor of your awakening. Everything that's happening is in support of you lighting your own fire within. So until we meet again, may your path be well lit and your heart be guided. Shine bright, seekers, until next time.